So grab yourself some popcorn. It's 50 minutes long. I don't know. We're gonna let it run for some of it because some of it's gonna be boring. But we will stop to mention at least near the beginning here. There's probably gonna be a lot more stopping because we're gonna pause at every talking head to see what credentials they have, or who they are. But this is the documentary. It was called "Tracking Down the Origins of the Wuhan Virus." I think is the name of the documentary. So here we go.
I watch CNN, I watch Fox, I watch CBS, and in this case, there's a lot.
And please let me know if you can hear everything fine. Burn.
This is just the essential nature of Chinese communism. Chinese communism is evil.
Every person it harms.
Look at this propaganda.
Attributable to the Chinese Communist Party.
Burn. Like they clearly have a budget to like shove in all these like shots. The origins of the Wuhan coronavirus. I remember what I was going to say before now, but it's relevant to the title of the documentary, so it's perfect. I thought about this even before showing the documentary, which is this idea of tracking a virus. And we don't know a lot of the time what the origins are for any virus. So, for example, HIV. HIV is a virus where we know a lot about it. We know roughly where it probably originated. We know that it likely came from a chimpanzee before it somehow ended up in humans. But there's a lot to that story that we don't know, including who patient zero was. So who was the first human, or what was the first cluster of humans to have been infected with HIV. And it's the same thing with almost any virus that you study. So I even think it was the recent swine flu, the H1N1. You have a bunch of countries that are listed as the possible place that it originated from, but even they, like, there's still arguments and disagreements, and it's become like a political issue because no one wanted to be the country from which the H1N1 virus originated from. So I think it was like sort of like rounded that it probably came from either Mexico or America, I believe, from when I last researched this like a long time ago, but no one really knows for sure, and each of those countries like adamantly denies that it came from them. But here's the thing is, we almost know for sure that it came from China this time. And we know that because the first cases that became as intense originated at this, at least the first outbreak originated from the Wuhan market, which I think is very uncontroversial in the sense of it's likely that the virus was elsewhere before it came to the Wuhan market. But the Wuhan market was like the first super spreading event when it at least reached the point of becoming something where scientists were like, oh, what is this, right? But then again, it's going to be very hard to track that back to find out where exactly it did originate, which feeds into the conspiracy narrative, right? Because if the conspiracy theorists can constantly say, well, like, they don't know where it came from, and that's why they're trying to cover it up. Like, that's like what they'll try to like go to, right? Can't just be that we don't know.
The origin of the now widely known coronavirus in early February, with its timing with the Hong Kong protests, the Taiwan elections, and the U.S.-China trade deal. My name is Joshua Phillip. I'm an investigative reporter at the Epoch Times in New York, writing about the Chinese Communist Party's programs of espionage and unconventional warfare for well over a decade. Videos and messages from Chinese citizens leaking through the censorship suggested the situation was much worse than what the regime was reporting. As my research progressed, initially...
Well, I don't have a ton of information on this Joshua Phillips person, but he's the one who threw together this documentary. But the one thing... Well, documentary... The one thing I will say about this, though, is you could tell already, like splicing together these clips that really tell you absolutely nothing, but it's supposed to be like, oh, look, they're grainy footage shot from, like, somewhere hidden. It's evidence of some sort of conspiracy. And then it's immediately cutting to clips of him in this, like, highly produced office where it's supposed to look like a library, and all he's doing while in the library is reading like printed off sheets that he got off the internet. Just shit.
Answers turned into more questions. I soon
Oh, look at
realized
me
there
with
was
my
much
printed
more to
sheets.
the story than we were being told. Today, the coronavirus is impacting over 100 countries around the world. Billions of lives are at risk. And from what is said by the
Stock
Chinese
footage is
Communist
so
Party,
good.
this
I know.
allegedly started spontaneously in the seafood market in Wuhan, China.
Now, even that claim allegedly started spontaneously in the seafood market. I don't think anyone like would say spontaneously, right? It probably had a cause. We don't, and like even in this, I think like he goes on to say that eventually they're aware of other cases, like that it didn't necessarily originate at the market. It's quite possible that it did, but it didn't necessarily originate there. But they make it sound spontaneously, like it just poof. And I don't even know if the Chinese government, like you can just basically say that.
Wuhan is the capital of Hubei province, the largest city in central China.
Also, let me know his voice is
Market
quiet, but you can
located
tell
in
his
Jianghan
voice
district
compared to
of
the
Wuhan
music
City.
is crazy.
It is a large, comprehensive market that includes pork and a variety of frozen seafood, flavored spices, as well as some game meats. The first thing that received public attention about the epidemic was an internal notice from the Wuhan Health Commission. There has been a continuous occurrence of pneumonia cases of unknown cause. The notice issued on December 30, 2019, clearly required all medical units to report similar cases of unknown pneumonia. The notice started spreading online, and on December 31st, 2019, the Wuhan Health Commission issued a public notice for the first time, saying that some medical institutions found a link between the pneumonia cases and the Huanan seafood market. However, the notice pointed out that there was no evidence of obvious human-to-human transmission and no infection among medical personnel.
So I want to say right there too, right? This memo was released on December 30th, I think he said. So again, that was like 10 days after it first came on the radar, and I think even then it was 2 weeks before the first confirmed case to come from the seafood market, which was like around December 12th, I think, from looking it up. And so when they say here there was no evidence of obvious human-to-human transmission and no infection among medical personnel, it's something like this that they'll take and they'll go, no evidence, which means it wasn't coming from human-to-human transmission. So, like, how did these people at the market have the virus? It clearly didn't come from everything because there's no evidence. Or, like, they'll, like, it makes it sound, like, spooky or mysterious when it's like, again, they only just discovered this virus 10 days prior to this. 10 days. And think how much we still don't know today, an entire year later. Or a year plus.
Well, like, think about how long it takes us to figure out how one of the new variants works. Like, it'll generally be, like, new variant discovered, probably weeks after it's been spreading, and then, like, weeks later, we're just like, oh no, I guess it's more transmissible. Oops.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, like, and then this is a completely new virus. Like, so that the fact they're already, like, figuring stuff out after 10 days is actually, like, a lot better than what we are still doing a year into the pandemic.
Well, I mean, 'cause here's the thing is, like, whether or not, I'd be the first to say that, yes, the Chinese government was incompetent and it led to this, and this, and they could have, whatever, or they tried to cover things up or something like this. If that actually happened and it comes out, I would be the first to say that it did. But you look at, like, even what our governments are doing right now with, like, the quasi-lockdowns, and then, like, and it comes to the point where, like, sometimes governments make decisions on, like, weird evidence that don't make sense, or they're being done for other reasons and so forth. So it's like, if it is the case that they're doing this honestly and they're looking at it and this is what the information we're getting here, then it's like, if anything, they're doing way better about this than any of us have done or any of our governments have done, where it looks like they're actually kind of taking this thing seriously. I have seen other evidence that, like, they try to cover certain angles of it up, and who knows? I think, like, later on, especially when the pandemic is over and people will start, like, investigating how the initial start of this began, we might get more information at that level. And I'd be the first to say that they're guilty of a cover-up. But right now, like they're again, this documentary happened in April, like 2 months after, or three to 4 months after the first cases were sort of showing up. And already they're like, it's a whole cover-up. Everything's mysterious. No evidence.
Because they planned it.
Yeah.
On January 1st, 2020, the Hunan seafood market posted a notice of closure. This was followed by a thorough cleanup of the market, which as an investigative reporter seemed rushed.
Yeah. They did a thorough cleanup of the market, which as an investigative reporter seemed rushed. Because what I want to say is, like, even like if it is an infectious thing, it might have been a good thing to scrub the thing clean. Like, they might not even be thinking of a cover-up. They might be thinking of, if it originated from the food at this market, we need to get rid of it. You know, like they don't.
No, I think that's what he's saying, and then he's saying that they cleaned it up too quickly.
Right. Well, he's saying because it's a cover-up. Like, why did they clean it up so quickly? What do they have to hide? When it's like, I don't know, like, you have a new virus. I can imagine a government just being like, there's this new virus, we don't know what it is. It could be transmitted through the food. It could be from this thing. Let's clean the whole market up. That makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
But no, the investigative reporter is using his own expertise as an investigative reporter to tell us that it seems rushed. Seems rushed.
Guan Yi, a well-known Hong Kong expert.
I love this too. Guang He, a well-known Hong Kong expert. And I'm just like, I don't know who they are. Are they a well-known Hong Kong expert? Should I trust what you're saying here?
Echoed my concern that the move was like destroying a crime scene. Since then, Wuhan officials have repeatedly said that most cases of pneumonia in Wuhan have a history of exposure to the Hunan seafood market. On January 26, the Institute of Virology of China CDC announced that 33 of the 585 environmental samples from the Hunan seafood market were found to contain the novel coronavirus nucleic acid, and the virus was successfully isolated from the positive culture samples, suggesting that the virus originated from wild animals sold at the market. At this point, Hunan seafood market being the source of the epidemic became an official conclusion. A few days.
So I love too, it's like it claims that at this point it became like an official conclusion. But like, did it? Official to who?
Well, it's an official suspected source.
Yeah.
So not 100%. Like,
didn't even catch that with the suspected source.
Like, it's not.
We suspect it came from here, and that's our official conclusion. Oh my god. Oh, I love it.
God.
They're so stupid.
The epidemic became an official conclusion. A few days later, however, a report from the journal Science published online challenged that story. The report cited a paper in The Lancet, one of the world's top medical journals, and questioned whether Wuhan's novel coronavirus pneumonia could not have originated at the market. The paper, titled Clinical Features of Patients Infected with 2019 Novel Coronavirus in Wuhan, China, was published in The Lancet on January 24th. The first author of the paper is Huang Xiaolin, Deputy Director of Jin Yin Tan Hospital, the first designated hospital for treatment of unknown pneumonia in Wuhan. Why would this come as a challenge to the official narrative?
I think this journal.
So, why was this report a challenge to the official narrative? So 437. I'm going to go back, grab the title, and I'm going to look it up, because I guarantee you it's going to say, there's probably going to be a warning on that article saying it's being used by used by conspiracy theories. Clinical features of patients infected. 2019 novel coronavirus. There we go, The Lancet. here. All right, I have it for background just in case they get wild with it. We should also look up who this person is too. Sean Lin.
I think this journal article is very important.
Sean Lin, former lab director of the Viral Disease Branch, Walter Reed Army Institute of Research. Okay. Walter Reed.
That's a whole bunch of words.
Yeah, Google's not... This person is clearly not well known, because a simple Google research is not pulling them up. Unless that's his name there. Let's try that. Oh, it's just him. So he just writes conspiracy stuff now. Stuff on the vaccine development. Nope, I was hoping I would get something a bit more, but let's listen to what he has to say.
They reveal a lot of important informations. For example, this paper talk about the first patient onset was actually on December 1st. These patients were not related to Huanan seafood market. And also no epidemiological association was found between the first patient and subsequent patient. And then also on this paper, I talk about on December 10th, there were 3 more onset cases, 2 of which were not related to Huanan seafood market wholesale. Major discovery is that a total of 41 patients were counted in this paper, and 14 of them proved to be unrelated to the seafood market, accounting for more than 1/3. No one sells bed at the seafood market too, and the official from CDC didn't mention they find any beds in the seafood market too.
Certainly the Lancet paper show.
Oh, we'll get to Judy in a second. So what he's saying there is like technically true, and I do remember. So it is in this, and even pulling up the CDC article or the Lancet article, it does show that yes, there is prior cases that show that it's possible that this thing didn't arrive or didn't emerge from the Wuhan market. What is clear is the Wuhan market is probably likely the source of the first super spreader event. So we know this now about the virus, right? Which is there's sometimes people will hold large gatherings of people where all of a sudden the virus was jumping from just a one-to-one person or a few people will have a super spreader event where it just spreads to a whole bunch of people. So it's quite possible that what happened was someone got the virus not at the Wuhan market, but then brought the virus to the Wuhan market. Which further evidence to that is that no bats were being sold at the Wuhan market. Now, that doesn't mean that necessarily the virus had to have gone from bat to human. I think I've read reports that still it's quite possible that there was like an intermediary species, and the most common one people suspect is a pangolin, which is like a little like armadillo anteater type of looking thing. And so it's quite possible that they were sold at the market, and that could have been the thing, but bats were definitely not sold at the market. And so that leads people to suspect that it likely didn't come from the market. Like, that wasn't the spontaneous source as they're setting it up. Now, they want to say that this is evidence of, I guess, the Chinese government doing some sort of conspiracy. But why? Why would the Chinese government allow one of the researchers from a hospital in China to write a Lancet report that goes against the so-called official narrative? Like, none of that is explained. None of that is explained at all. Now we get into Judy Mikovits. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, Judy Mikovits, around the exact same time that she was making this documentary, was in another documentary that became famous called Plandemic, that was basically scrubbed from the internet entirely because it was like terrible. Judy is a hardcore conspiracy theorist, but not only that, I'll pull up her Wikipedia here, and we can delight in her past history, in case you want to know about Judy Mikovits. Pull it up here. On September 29th, 2011, Mikovits was terminated by the WPI due to disputes over the control of lab samples and the integrity of her work. She subsequently came under investigation for alleged manipulation of data in her publications related to XMRV. On November 18, 2011, she was arrested at her home in Ventura County, California, and jailed for 5 days based on WPI's allegations that she stole laboratory notebooks, a computer, and other material. She was held temporarily pursuant to that case, and her lawyer said the charges had no merit. By November 28, after negotiations with the WPI, some lab notes were returned. Later, the criminal charges brought against Mikovits were dismissed by the district attorney and assistant district attorney in Reno. The Washington Post later reported that the Whitmore family's legal troubles prevented the Wahoo County from pursuing the case. So, she basically spent some time in jail for stealing lab stuff. And subsequently lost her job. Or previously lost her job before stealing the stuff. And some of her papers got retracted. And because of this, she basically realized that her career as a scientist was over. Could say, well, did she even have a career? Most of her career seemed to be manipulating stuff and creating fake data and being caught for doing so. But now it was like that whole thing was a conspiracy that was led by Dr. Fauci, who just has it out to get me, and I'm a rebel who's like calling out the inside people who are ruining science. And that is the story of Judy Mikovits. So she's a delightful figure. But like, so that being said, is just to say, to frame that you probably shouldn't take anything she says at face value. Even if it does say that she well, it says molecular biologist, but like, she has not worked in this field since 2011. And former director of lab of antiviral mechanisms, NCI. Yes, back in 2011 when she spent time in jail.
That supposed patient zero was nowhere near the market. Secondly, that there are no bats in the seafood market or anywhere close. The idea of the spread so fast through a population, just the way it was said through the seafood market, is highly unlikely and improbable.
On January 29th, The Lancet republished an analysis of 99 confirmed cases at Jinyintan Hospital, of which 50 had no history of exposure to the seafood market. According to the New England Journal, of the 425 cases confirmed, 45 cases onset before January 1st had no history of exposure to the seafood market.
Well, now, of course not. I mean, by then, it's already spreading into the community. Now, if you want to say, like, previous to that, like, again, we already documented by the early Lancet report that there were some cases that did not originate from the market. Or at least, here's the thing. I'll be careful. We don't know that they originated from the market. It's quite possible that the person just didn't remember going to the market, and therefore when they reported it to the people who were doing the research, forgot, or either they bumped into someone who did go to the market, or whatever, right? There could be ways in which they are connected to the market. The researchers just couldn't figure it out, right? But even then, it's like no one is saying that it definitely had to have like spawned sui generis from the from the food market. I mean, because it couldn't.
Actually, no. All COVID cases everywhere.
Yeah.
They must have traveled to that seafood market.
Yep. Nailed it.
Yeah. Also, that highlighting noise was horrible.
Yeah.
Notably, the authors of the 2 Lancet papers in the New England Journal of Medicine are doctors and medical experts in mainland China. Daniel Lucy, an epidemiologist at the University of Georgetown, said in response to the Lancet paper that if the data were accurate, the first case would have been infected by the virus already in November 2019, because of the incubation period between infection and symptoms. This would mean that the virus was quietly spreading between people in some parts of Wuhan before the cluster of cases with a history of exposure. The Huanan seafood market began on December 15.
Again, that's perfectly possible.
Group from the
There's
National
no reason
Health
to
Commission
doubt
arrived
that.
in Wuhan as early as December 31st, 2019. The expert panel established a set of diagnostic criteria after investigating Jinyintan Hospital of Wuhan that stipulated a history of contact with Huanan seafood market, the person having a fever, and displaying the whole genome sequence. All three standards have to be met to confirm a case. This standard was used until a second group of experts.
So the thing that I love about it is like the music to this. It's just slamming, just like dun, 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 dun. And then just like, here's facts about what we knew about the virus at the time. Terrifying.
Including Zhang Nanshan, arrived in Wuhan in January.
Like, what is the
18th,
conspiracy
made a
supposed to
decision.
begin?
Why did the panel impose a history of seafood market exposure as a criteria of diagnosis, knowing that at least a third of the cases were unrelated?
It did say that
to
it
the seafood
changed it
market?
after though.
They clearly know about 14 patients not related to Huanan seafood market at all. That clearly means another source of outbreak. I think somehow this could be a malfeasance or somewhat intentionally cover up some important source of infection.
It can
So like immediate, like you go to like it didn't originate from the market, so therefore this must be an intentional cover up or a misleading of the information. Why is that the case? It seems very plausible to me that the Chinese government, I mean, it's clear to me that the Chinese government isn't doing anything to cover it up, because most of the people reporting on this data are coming who work at Chinese hospitals and are publishing them in scientific journals. So it's like, if the Chinese government really wanted to cover it up, wouldn't they have cracked down on these people working at their hospitals, writing in the Lancet that like maybe this thing didn't originate from the market? And even
Jody,
yes,
Jody, don't you understand that the Chinese government is all powerful and controls every single one of its citizens and all information that comes out of China?
Yeah.
So therefore, unless the Epoch Times publishes it, sorry, I should have specified.
yeah.
So
Well,
therefore,
well,
you know, they couldn't have made a mistake. They must be covering it up.
Well, you can tell, like, the angle that they want to push is that this came from the lab, right? So, obviously, it's like, well, like, they're trying to cover it up because it came from the lab. But you could see another path, which is that it didn't originate from the market. It just it transferred prior to, like, the super spreading event that occurred at the market. And if that's the case, why would the government need to cover it up? Which, so it's like they have, in order to get to the lab hypothesis, they already have to like suspect that the Chinese government, every move they're making here is some sort of cover up thing. Where it's like, what's the evidence for that? Like it's like they just assumed already in the documentary that it originated from the market, and that was the official conclusion. When it's like, why was that the official conclusion? And was it? Like, I'm not convinced yet by this documentary. You know, it's like you just said it. And when you showed the words on the screen, those were the words that came out of your mouth, documentary person. Like, it didn't come from anyone. You know, it would be one thing if, like, he pulled up, like, a newspaper saying, official conclusion. Government says virus originated from the Wuhan market. But none of that happened.
can go a long way to covering up the actual source by imposing a false place, and you're not looking
Look at how many cuts.
at the actual
Let's watch this again. Like, I have to say that she just said like really insane stuff, and they had to cut around it.
It can go a long way to covering up the actual source by
Cut.
imposing a false
Cut.
place, and you're not
Cut.
looking at the actual
my God.
victims. Then you're only
Cut.
allowed to find your keys under the light post.
The numbers that we're getting from China.
And what did she
about
even
new
say
infections-
there?
Bunch of words.
So now we get to Gordon Chang, okay? So here's what you need to know about Gordon Chang. It says he's an Asian affairs expert and columnist. The only reason he's considered an Asian affairs expert is because he wrote a book back in 2001 called The Coming Collapse of China. And 20 years later, we're still waiting for that collapse. But don't worry, Gordon Chang is adamant that it's coming. It just hasn't happened yet. And the only reason I know this is because he is a frequent contributor to the Rebel News program, which is why I know about him. And he's always on there just to tell you how bad China is. And it's never backed up with any sourcing or information or evidence. It's just China's bad. Didn't you know that China's bad? I did like on this Wikipedia here, which is a fun thing. It says, since 2001, Chang has made predictions that the Chinese government will eventually collapse. Sean Dingley, director of the Center for American Studies at Fudan University, wrote that Chang's predictions collapse his own credibility. John Tamney of Real Clear Markets has criticized Chang's predictions and analyses about China, stating that Chang possesses limited knowledge of simple economics and that Chang's feel for China has been impressively incorrect for close to 20 years. And if his latest commentary is at all indicative of his grasp of what authors economic growth, Chang's batting average on the matter of China isn't about to improve. And that's on his Wikipedia page. So Gordon Chang is special, and I don't trust a single word that comes out of his mouth. So again, he appears, well, he used to, back in April, he was like on Ezra's show constantly to tell us how bad China was.
Infections and deaths are highly suspicious. We know that Beijing, for 6 weeks in December and January, suppressed information of the epidemic. And then when they officially acknowledged it on January 20, they then started a campaign of suppression of information. We know that.
Did you follow that? So he said, we know they've been suppressing information, and we know this because on January 20th, they let us know they're suppressing, like, what? I gotta read that again. Wait.
He's under the light post.
The numbers that we're getting from China about new
Okay.
infections and deaths are highly suspicious.
Okay, they're highly
We know that
suspicious.
Beijing, for 6
We know
weeks in
that
December
they're
and January,
suppressing
suppressed
information
of the epidemic.
Okay.
And then when they officially acknowledged it on January 20,
So they officially acknowledged that they're suppressing information. That's what I get from that. So when they officially acknowledged it on January 20,
they then started a campaign of suppression of information.
All right. Just to make sure that they were actively suppressing information, and then they outright said, "Hey, there's a virus," and then they were suppressing it again.
I don't follow this at all. They're suppressing the information, and then they acknowledged on January 20th that they were suppressing the information, and since then they've been suppressing the information. Information was suppressed.
When I want to suppress information, usually what I do is go, "Hey guys, I'm doing something. I'll see you guys. See you all later. See you soon." I'm trying to keep my new car under wraps. Just to let you know, I got a new car. Don't tell anyone. It's a secret.
I don't understand any of that. My God, these people are stupid. Like, what do you say to that? They put this in the they're just let them talk. Let them talk. This is gold. Gordon fucking Chang. I will say, so one of my favorite things, actually, I should point this out because this is amazing. Since we're at a moment where Gordon Chang is being really stupid, and I pointed this out on our podcast too. Let me find the article here. There is another Gordon Chang in the world who also is someone who studies China. And they did an interview for the South China Morning Post. And I love the title of the article is Not That Gordon Chang, Stanford Professor Assesses Sino-US Relations. And then the subheading is Being Mixed Up with China Skeptic is the Bane of My Life, says Gordon H. Chang.
That's fucking incredible. Yes. Holy shit.
So the fact that the Stanford professor gets confused for the Gordon Chang in this goddamn documentary is the bane of his life. Holy shit. Oh my God.
Imagine that. Jesus Christ. This guy is so fucking annoying to me. It offends my existence as someone who shares his name. That's incredible. What a fucking incredible way. I want to live my life such that someone does an interview and says, that person is the bane of my existence. That person I've never met, fuck that person. Seriously.
Yeah. Oh, when I first discovered that, I could, because like when I was initially searching for information behind Gordon Chang, I stumbled on that article, and it was so wonderful.
We know that because the central leading group that was announced on January 26th has a 9-person roster, and it's very heavy with propaganda officials. Indeed, the vice chairman of the group is the Communist Party's propaganda czar. It appears that the party's main goal here is suppression of information, controlling the narrative. That's more important to them than actually ending the epidemic.
I do wonder, do they not realize that, like, even like Trump or like people in the West have like communications representatives that want to try to like shape the narratives coming out of their administration? Because
the communists.
Because I don't doubt that the Chinese government did that, and further, like, again, I'm not like a Chinese government lover and obsessor, but like I'm sure that like they're not gonna want to like promote bad things that they've done or things that they screwed up on. But like merely having someone there to shape the narrative doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing anything nefarious yet, right? I mean, like you would have to further up that claim to say, here's what reality is, and we have evidence for that, and here's what the propaganda person on this panel was saying, and they don't line up, so therefore we know that they were spreading like false information. But instead, all his claim is, we know that they're spreading misinformation because they have the propaganda person there, so therefore, and that's not an argument.
The thing is, like, yeah, like it's they're saying stuff, and they put the minister in charge of saying stuff in charge. How dare they?
Yeah.
Like, no shit?
No, exactly. And like, we have the, like, what was Sean Spicer in the Trump administration, who on his first day was like, the crowd size isn't this big, they're lying, it was bigger. Like, yeah, this is what your press person does, so congratulations. Now, if you can't, like, in that case, we knew Spicer was lying. Do we know that they're lying in this case? No. Like, give us the information. If you show me that they're lying, I'll go, you're right, Gordon Chang. They're lying. This guy, did they say his name? I'm not even sure who this person is. Let's go a bit back here.
Controlling the narrative. That's more important to them than actually ending the epidemic.
It's funny hearing that as well at this point, because they did a really good job at ending their pandemic compared to everywhere else. Now we get a General Robert Smallman, who my guess is that he works for the military-industrial complex in America. How many bets are we going to take for that? Robert Spalding is a retired United States Air Force Brigadier General. He currently serves as a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, which is a politically conservative American think tank based in Washington, D.C. So, it looks like it shares allegiances with the Rand Corporation. So, there you go. Rand Corporation, for those who don't know, is a very right-wing think tank in America. Okay, While at the National Security Council, Spalding notably wrote a memo calling for nationalizing the development of 5G wireless networks. Whoa. Spalding's advocacy was reportedly deemed outside his authority, and he was subsequently asked to leave the National Security Council. He has since been notable as a critic of China. Interesting. In 2019, he published the book Stealth War: how China took over while America's elite slept. But that's weird that he's now in these conspiracy areas, but he used to be a proponent of 5G wireless networks and wanted to nationalize them. Unless
he realized that 5G was actually creating coronavirus.
It's weird because like it's usually the 5G stuff is linked to like Huawei and all this. So why would he be in support of it only to leave the White House, the Trump White House, to then I don't know. Something doesn't like fully line up, but interesting. That considers the plan was. Yeah, so Spalding was known both inside and outside the administration as a China hawk from 2014 to 2016. He led the China division at the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and before joining the Trump White House, he was the U.S. Defense Attaché at the U.S. Embassy in Beijing. One key argument for Spalding's 5G plan was that only the government can properly defend technological infrastructure from Chinese interference. So that's okay. So it was,
of course,
from an anti-Chinese angle. Okay, no, it's making sense now. So this is who we're dealing with: a military Chinese hawk within the American government.
China, when SARS happened and we were evacuated, and it's the same, it was exact same thing. There's no transparency. They tried as long as they could to cover it up until finally it was just like with the coronavirus, they could no longer cover it up, and then they proceeded to act. I mean, I think from my perception back then, their response to it is exactly the same.
I love like no information's being brought up. It's just like, yeah, they tried to cover up like the earlier virus, and like what's happening here is like it's the same. Thank you, Robert Spalding. Thank you for showing up. And now that was part 1. So that was the Wuhan market part 1. Now we're in part 2, mysteries of the gene sequence. I love this stock, but like
on January 10th,
Joshua Phillips getting down to work.
Genome sequence of the Wuhan novel coronavirus, and many of the world's top virologists began analyzing it. As early as January 7th, an academic, Zhang Yongzhen, from the National Institute of Communication.
I just want to say that Google Translate took this person's name as Jungle Jen.
Fucking Google.
That's a cute name. Jungle Jen.
As early as January 7th, an academic, Zhang Yongzhen, from the National Institute of Communicable Disease Control and Prevention, along with the School of Public Health of Fudan University, submitted a joint paper to Nature. The paper was published on February 3rd and pointed out that the Wuhan coronavirus is closely related to CoV-ZC45 and CoV-ZXC21, two viruses sampled...
Did you notice that? There was a sharp edit there. Like, maybe he just said it incorrectly. Watch this.
Two viruses...
Like, it was a different voice.
Pointed out that the Wuhan coronavirus is closely related to CoV-ZC45 and CoV-ZXC21, two viruses sampled from bats in Zhoushan by the People's Liberation Army. The Wuhan coronavirus has an 89.1% nucleotide similarity.
How much do you want to bet he understands absolutely nothing about what he's reading here?
And even exhibits 100% amino acid similarity
with
NSP7 proteins.
He doesn't know what he's saying.
Shortly after the paper was published, other
it's like, I'm glad you gave me these numbers.
A program developed by the National Institute of Health and the National Center for Biotechnology Information to compare the viral sequence based on the data submitted by Chinese authorities on January 12th. The results matched with Zhang's findings. Another scientist, Lu Raojian from the Chinese Center for
they
Disease
found out that
Control
it was a
and
coronavirus.
also published a paper in the Lancet on January 30th. The paper stated that the Wuhan virus has an 88% similarity to two bat-derived SARS-like coronaviruses collected in Zhoushan, Zhejiang province of China. The earliest discovery of this bat-derived virus is by an expert from the Research Institute for Medicine of Nanjing Command. A paper published in 2018 states that scientists from this institute detected many SARS-like coronaviruses in bats from Zhoushan City, also known as bat-like coronavirus, Zhoushan virus.
Well, the
In
graphics
short,
are just
scientists
incredible.
found the Wuhan coronavirus, the current pandemic, is highly similar to a bat SARS-like coronavirus previously discovered by the Nanjing Military Research Institute, showing 100% amino acid similarity in
Like,
NSP7.
This is so
and
much
envelope
just to say
protein,
that scientists
protein.
think that it
What
came
does
from
this high
bats.
similarity reveal?
Okay, what does it reveal? Here we go.
Hard to see a protein is 100% identical when the virus jumps species. And so that suggesting maybe the virus could be generated with a reverse engineer process.
I certainly believe that the 100% amino acid similarity says it can't possibly be a natural mutation.
It can't be natural because it's 100% amino acids. I don't like, how do you this coming from the person who was caught lying about data and spent time in prison for stealing data. My God, I love that. Like, all that just to say, like, the virus came from bats. No shit. I'm pretty sure everyone knows this. Hell yeah, I love experimenters. Oh my God. Like,
On January 10th,
I want to just look at
100% amino acids.
So it's clear she's in a room, and then it shows a clip of Joshua shaking his head to this answer outside. Watch.
Similarity says it can't possibly be a natural mutation.
What a weird fucking cut. Yeah.
On January 21st, researchers from the Institut Pasteur, Shanghai, Chinese Academy of Sciences published a paper in Science China Life Sciences that mentioned an important phenomenon. The sequence of a key part of S protein of Wuhan virus has high homology with the SARS virus. What are S proteins? In the well-known coronavirus picture, they are little mushrooms attached to the surface of the virus. These S proteins, also
Little
known as
mushrooms,
spine
the
proteins
scientific
or
term.
spike proteins, are the most important tool for the coronavirus to invade human cells. If we compare the receptor ACE2 on the cell surface of human bodies to a lock, this S protein is the key, which can unlock this lock on the cell surface and then invade into the cell to propagate and destroy it.
That means virus now can infect human cell much easier. That's probably also one of the important reasons that contributing to multi-organ failure when people have a very severe disease. It can spread out in the human body much faster.
Well, the S proteins, the high similarity of the S proteins from SARS-1 to now SARS-2, that's your spike protein. That's the lock and key. That's going to be what drives it.
I'm just repeating what you already said.
And so we know that's the pathogenic spike protein that for the original SARS. So
Yeah,
now
no
you're
shit. The
allowed
virus
to
is
add
pathogenic.
to human tissues because the spike
Give me
proteins
some
of the
answers.
natural evolutionary strains don't infect human cells at all. So that
What?
What was that?
But it's saying that they made a comparison between the older SARS viruses that did in fact infect us. Like, I don't understand what the hell. She goes in this whole thing to just repeat everything we just had, only to say that, like, oh no, these ones specifically, it can't be natural because now it can affect us when it couldn't infect us before. Jesus Christ.
That research has been going on at Wuhan and published since 2007. And clearly, if that spike protein from SARS weren't on the new COVID-19 or SARS-2, it wouldn't be able to enter human cells. So again, this is evidence that it couldn't go through the Wuhan seafood market.
Research
What? damn it! Like, how did we get infected by the other SARS viruses then? How did they ever go from animal to infectious to humans? Were they all created in laboratories? Every SARS virus that has killed us is evidence of people creating viruses to kill us. You know, and we don't necessarily have the technology to do that today, but apparently we had it 20 years ago when these other viruses were happening. Jesus fucking
In ancient
Christ.
Sumeria,
Yeah.
they created the first coronaviruses, and
like, it almost sounds to me like they're gonna make some sort of like it's the same thing that like intelligent design theorists talk about when they talk about like the flagella. Like, there's things on like bacterium that couldn't evolve in one leap, so therefore you had to have some design, some like divine creator that like put these pieces together that would explain why they have flagella. And then you have scientists coming around going, look at they can be useful in individual steps, so there's a clear process of evolution here, whatever, right? But it seems to me like the jump she could be making is like, there's no way that it would just get this protein through like magical processes. It had to be designed in a lab. When it's like, no, we know that these things evolve, and that's why the transitory species could be important. That this thing went through multiple stages of mutation before it ended up in us. Because like some of the other papers that they showed, it had an 88% certainty, or no, an 88% like relationship between like the SARS viruses that they located on these bats back in 2018, according to that earlier paper. So it's like they're not like identical to those SARS viruses. And I remember what did she make the point about like the 100% amino acid thing that didn't make any sense? Yeah. I don't know. All of this is nonsense.
Research into the virus genome sequence revealed many essential data points. According to a February 28 report in the South China Morning Post, the Shanghai T3 laboratory, which first shared the Wuhan coronavirus genome with the world, was ordered to close by authorities, impeding further research on the virus. Professor Zhongyang Zhen and his team, who published the genome sequence on January 11th, worked at this laboratory. According to a February 26 report on Caixin, Zhongyang Zhen's
again with a
isolated and completed the genome sequence of the previously unknown virus on January 5th. On the same day, the Shanghai Public Health Clinical Center reported the discovery to the National Health Commission and recommended prevention measures. No response was received as of January 11th.
Like, so all of this is happening like several weeks after the first exposure, but like there's like a bunch of information being thrown at us here, but all it's showing is that like some people were working on the virus, and at times certain people weren't responding, but they were still able to publish things. Like, this whole time I'm just like, all this information is publicly available due to people publishing this stuff. Yet you're trying to say that somehow that's a conspiracy theory? Like, I do not understand what he's trying to get with this. I don't know if any of you are following along what he's saying here, but I can't see what the connections are being made here.
And it was then that the team decided to publicize the virus genome sequence on virological.org, becoming the first team to do so in the world. Caixin also reported that the Hubei
So they
Health
publicly
already
released the
notified
information.
genome sequencing organizations on January 1st regarding the cessation of analysis of Wuhan virus samples. Existing virus samples must be destroyed. Information on the samples, related to papers and related data, are all...
Okay, here we go. Where did this come from?
Samples. Virological.org, becoming the first team to do so in the world. Caixin also reported that the Hubei Health Committee already notified genome sequencing organizations on January 1st regarding the cessation of analysis of Wuhan virus samples. Existing virus samples must be destroyed. Information on the samples, related to papers and related data, are all prohibited from release. On January 3rd,
So, like, I don't even, like, he doesn't give you enough information as to, like, what that is. And then he quote mines this thing, and it's clearly like this thing was written in Mandarin. Yet he's gonna... he pulls out this quote, but like, what is this? I don't even know what this is. Kaizen. Like, how am I supposed to look into this? This is just you fucking saying shit.
Yeah, I know what you're fucking doing because I can't read that.
January 3rd, China's National Health Commission.
Apparently, this is the government telling people they can't release information, but he's saying that they did release it.
Was presented. Afterwards, the once active Chinese scientific community suddenly fell into an eerie silence. What was the Chinese Communist Party trying to hide?
But they didn't go into silence because we already had them pointing out that like they were publishing data in the time period that he's talking about. What eerie silence? What the fuck is he saying?
This is telling us the Chinese government is censoring this information. They do not allow the samples to be sequenced or do not allow the sequence to be published or submitted to the gene bank.
Its response
But they
to
did
the
submit it.
virus is extremely troubling. It ignored it for 6 weeks. It allowed it to spread around China. It tried to get other countries to not protect themselves. This is dangerous, irresponsible behavior, and it's endangered not only the Chinese people, but people around the world.
So there was, I remember back like a year ago, there was some question as to whether or not the Chinese government notified people enough to like make note that this thing was as bad as it turned out being. And maybe there is some like way to go like, hey, Chinese government, you could have done a better job here. So maybe all that's true, but then it's still like nothing that's being said here is suggesting like, because like he's showing these like this information that says that the government was wanting them to seize the publications, but then prior to that they were showing publications. Like the one person who worked at the hospital released the information to a virology database, which is why we know what the sequence is. None of it makes any sense.
No other way of looking at it. They are responsible for the continuation.
And then you just have the talking heads being like,
it will come back because it's going to be with us now permanently. It will come back, and every person that it kills, every person it harms, is directly attributable to the Chinese Communist Party.
Bum, bum, bum. Which again, before we get into part 3, it's worth noting now a year later after this documentary was created, the Chinese government got theirs under control. And everywhere else did not, you know? And arguably, if it continues to go, because mutations are occurring outside of China, it's hard to say that it's China's fault for its initial proliferation. South Korea crushed that shit. Yeah, like tons of people crushed it. Australia, New Zealand crushed it. So it's not just there's governments similar to ours that also crush this thing, but somehow we can't get it under control. But they're gonna say it's all China's fault. We have to all blame it on China. And here's the thing: is like I haven't heard anyone really make this argument in a very long time. But this was the argument they were making back in April when like it was still fresh, right? Lockdowns just happened.
Through investigating the genome sequence, I found it significant that the S protein of the Wuhan coronavirus was critical in its cross-species ability to infect humans. While I was searching for related studies...
Did you now?
Yeah. Well, like Judy Miskovitz just told him, so...
I just fucking hate the, like, arrogant way that's portrayed. It's like, through my research, I decided that this biological thing was very important. Like, was it? Did you? Is it?
Are you gonna doubt this guy's research? I mean, like, look what he's doing right now. He's on a computer, Elron.
He's on a computer. He's on a computer.
He's researching currently. We're experiencing the research as it's happening.
One Chinese virologist...
Look at him, he's clicking away.
...caught my attention. She spent many years researching bats and coronaviruses. She was the first to locate...
Now this is going to be their candidate. She's the one who created the virus.
...cross-species barriers in order to directly infect human bodies. And she was the first to discover that the SARS virus was the result of a restructuring of multiple SARS-like coronaviruses found in bats. Her name is Shi Zhengli, and she may be an important link to the origin of the virus.
Now they're gonna just watch the moves that are gonna be made here, because they're gonna link this virus back to her as if she created it. Now, here's the thing is, we want to know about coronaviruses, because prior to this coronavirus outbreak that we had several others that did a lot of damage, like the MERS virus and SARS that like severely hit Toronto back in the day. So like we knew these viruses exist, we knew they were deadly. A lot of people were warning that they had the potential to wipe people out, and so they were researching them, and they were researching their origins and where they came from and all this stuff. And so there's going to be a lot of jumps made here between the work that she's doing to try to figure out these things and study these things to then say that somehow she created this thing. And let's just see if they sufficiently land it.
Wikipedia describes Shi Zhengli.
Oh, see,
as a,
look,
quote,
he's researching.
Chinese
Wikipedia,
virologist and
yeah.
researcher at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which is part of the Chinese Academy of Sciences. Further investigations show that Shi
fucking hate all these
Zhengli
people.
has been a figure of controversy since the Wuhan virus outbreak. This is due to a paper she published in 2015 discussing her own research into synthetic viruses. Caixin, a media company with ties to the Chinese Communist Party.
So what's happening is he can't pronounce the Chinese names, and so they have this like voice actor coming in, and they couldn't get him to pronounce it at all, so they had to get this other actor to come in to say the names. That's amazing.
Interviewed Shi Zhengli in an attempt to refute these rumors.
Dr. Zheng Li is one of the top experts in China studying about coronavirus in Wuhan Institute of Virology. She has so many publications from collecting, identify bad coronavirus from bad caves. Her lab had these capacities and very sophisticated capacity to generate mutations to make it best fit in human expression as well.
Delving further into related information, I discovered that Shi Zhengli published not one, but 4 papers in total, each of which contains important information.
4.
Since the SARS...
I look just like let's please it because she produced 4 papers, so she's like the world-renowned researcher on coronaviruses. Here's the other thing that I love. They want to make it out to sound like, isn't it suspicious that this lab researching coronaviruses was in the same city that the first outbreak happened? But also think about the reason why the lab is there, because it's in close proximity to like other locations where these bats could reside. It is where all the people going to study these viruses like come and hang out. So it's also quite likely that they're going to be nearby any eventual outbreak that does happen, because they're near the areas where these viruses sort of like accumulate in animals, which is why they're doing the research there. Which is why she's publishing so many papers on it. Like, oh my god.
SARS outbreak in 2003, Shi Zhengli has been conducting research on coronaviruses. From 2010 onward, the focus of Shi and her team was redirected to identifying the capacity for coronavirus transmission across species, specifically putting the spotlight on the S protein of the coronaviruses. In other words, her team's research in the Wuhan lab has been looking into the part that can make coronaviruses transmittable to humans.
Now, why might somebody want to know about that? Now, they're going to make it seem like she wants to know about this so she can engineer viruses and infect people. Maybe you want to know about this because you want to know when a virus lacks the S protein, then all of a sudden gains it and can infect humans. And we want to know what are the things that allow for a more frequent mutation to occur. And we might want to hinder that so that we don't have these coronaviruses like spreading out of control and infecting the entire planet, which is happening right now, you know. Maybe that might be something that we want people to research. No, like it's almost like the conclusion of this documentary is that no one ever should study viruses, ever, because The mere act of studying viruses is proof that you're actually trying to create them.
In June 2010, a team including Shi Zhengli published a paper. It describes research to understand the susceptibility of angiotensin converting enzyme 2 ACE2 proteins of different bat species to the S protein of the SARS virus. In the experiments, they also modified key amino acid convents to mutate the bat's ACE2 to examine compatibility with the SARS S protein. This paper demonstrated their awareness of the special relationship between the S protein and the ACE2 receptor. It also signified that she had unearthed the passageway for coronaviruses into human bodies.
So, not quite, but she was learning like what occurs within the virus, such that like what is the pathway of mutation that leads from a bat having this virus to it now ending up in humans, right? But like, of course they knew it had to do with the S protein. That's why she was looking at things that connect with the S protein. So these fucks are just of course they're scaremongering. This whole thing, like, do you not hear the music? Like, everything about this documentary is fucking stupid. It's like dun 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 ding 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 ding. The viruses are coming for you. It's like you want people to research viruses. The funny thing is, like, she was a co-author on a paper. I feel like if I remember correctly, I can't remember this paper or some of these papers that he's going to cite. I remember when I researched this a year ago, was most of the research was done in America. She was just a co-author on these papers. Which Elron, let me ask you about co-authoredness. How many co-authors can you sometimes have in a paper, and how many of them are directly responsible for like?
Don't you fucking talk.
Doing.
Don't you? No, I'm not gonna dox myself, but like, Jesus Christ, this one paper has like 50 co-authors. Jeez. Fucking Christ. You can have a lot.
Yep.
You can have a lot, especially as things get more interdisciplinary. You start having multiple sites and multiple different labs working together that all have, like, you know, research assistants and grad students and postdocs all doing one thing. Like, yeah, it can be a lot. It doesn't mean they're responsible, even though we might sign off on the paper, like that they designed the whole thing or whatever.
No, it was Shi Zhengli alone was the one who unearthed the passageway. No, it's amazing. They want to like tell this narrative, right? So they have to, the one person at this lab who's working on these coronaviruses, who's co-authored a bunch of papers with a whole bunch of scientists around the world, she is responsible. And that's the other thing too, is like this collaborative effort should tell you that like other countries were involved in the research that she was doing. So it couldn't be as secretive as they want to make it out to sound, because they're saying there's like cover up or she's somehow a nefarious figure who's like doing this stuff.
In October 2013, she and her team published a paper in the authoritative science journal Nature. They claimed a breakthrough in coronavirus research. What was their breakthrough? They successfully isolated 3 viruses from bats, one of which had an S protein that integrated with human ACE2 receptors. This effectively demonstrated the human infection of SARS-like viruses to humans without the need of an intermediary host. Then, in November 2015...
So, the reason why this is important, because a lot of people speculated that you couldn't get from the bat directly to humans, and their research was showing that you can get directly from bat mutation to humans. Although it's not clear, as we said earlier on, that this indeed happened with the current coronavirus, it's quite possible that it had an intermediary host like the pangolin. But as far as I could tell, no one has had any conclusive final decision on that matter yet.
She and her team at the Wuhan lab once again published a paper, this time in the British journal Nature Medicine. They discussed the creation of a synthetic virus, a self-replicating chimeric virus. This virus had the SARS virus as the framework, with the key S protein replaced by the one they had found in a bat coronavirus she mentioned in her 2013 paper. This new virus demonstrated a powerful ability for cross-species infection. The mice infected with this synthetic virus revealed severe lung damage with no cure.
So, they did create a mouse, or a virus, and it infected mice, and it showed lung damage. So it's like, yes, you can create viruses in a lab. That is not something that is beyond the realm of possibility. Most of this research is done in very quarantined facilities, which is why there's like various levels of like level 4 viral lab or something like this. So they're doing this research at these various labs. I think this is the research in particular that actually was not done specifically in China. It was done outside of Wuhan. If I can remember correctly, I might be wrong. But the point being is like, you would have what's being left out of here is a lot of the ways in which you can sort of like mess with viruses and stuff like this. You would see evidence of some sort of scaffolding. So the best way that I could put it, so they talk about scaffolding in the terms of like, you need to like have things in place in order to like to build things on top, right? So you put the scaffolding and you can start building things on top. And so we're not at this stage where you could just like magically mess around with viruses willy-nilly however you want. We need to use scaffolding to do it. And if you don't have evidence of prior scaffolding being there, then it's not likely that this thing was created in a lab. And what happens with the current COVID-19 virus, most scientists say none of that scaffolding is there. It's clear that it originated from an animal host, not engineered in a lab. But they're going to argue that because she at one time did research on synthetic viruses, that therefore she created this virus.
This symbolized that Xi's successful splicing of the SARS virus was a key to open the door to the cross-species transmission. What is startling is that these successful experiments on mice were only the tip of the iceberg. They planned to further experiment on primates. Although Xi Zhengli did not indicate any conclusion from this research, her move to research on primates suggests this was to more closely simulate the infection of humans with this new synthetic.
Listen to that music.
This wasn't done without controversy, however. Xi's experiments quickly triggered widespread debates from the academic community. Simon Wayne Hobson of the Pasteur Institute in France expressed deep concerns. He told Nature, if the new virus escaped, nobody could predict the trajectory. Propagation could happen anywhere.
His statement.
So, Nature does this a lot. They even did it with a lot of the like genetically modifying food stuff, and also whether or not we should be genetically modifying humans in various ways. So like they have these like open debate stuff. Now it's a question to whether or not we should actually be concerned about research like this, and there are ethical implications that I do think are worth studying. The thing that's annoying to me is that they're going to use this like inter-community discussion about the ethics of how to do this work and what is the best way to go forward in doing this kind of research with evidence that there was some sort of like nefarious thing happening here, which isn't the case, right? You might wonder like, should we be creating viruses in a lab to study them? The people on one side will say the reason why you want to study that is so we can learn how these things mutate and when they become more infectious. And that way we can start developing things like vaccines and stuff ahead of time, or we can learn ways to sort of catch these things so they don't get out of hand in the first place. And then you have the other people on the other side saying, yeah, but you could have like accidents. Labs aren't 100% secure. You might have rare but like real leaks out of labs, and that could create a virus that goes out in the world and does some bad stuff, right? These are the natures, are the sort of like externalities of research that people doing this research should be discussing, because you want them to discuss this stuff, because you want them to be prepared in case something does happen, right? All of that makes sense. But of course, they're going to see this like debate happening online and go, therefore, what she did was bad, which is nonsense.
Is exactly what's happening.
That is indeed Judy Mikovits.
However, this did not terminate.
We already went over why she's a hack.
On November 14, 2018, Shi Zhengli spoke at the School of Life Sciences and Biotechnology at Shanghai Jiaotong University. The topic was bat coronavirus and its cross-species infection. Reports of this event have since been deleted from the university website.
I love this so much. I will say, like, they say she didn't get terminated because she proposed research that other people said might be ethical, and they had a debate about it. Then it's like she did a talk back in 2018 and it was removed from the university website. I've given talks before in philosophy departments that I guarantee you are no longer up on those university websites. And I don't think that means it's some sort of grand conspiracy. No, once a website hosts a talk, it must be up on that website forever. Talks forever. Nice. Progressive with all my Ezra heads.
I discovered two more significant pieces of information
Ezra heads in the
regarding
chat.
the dangers of the research conducted by Shi Zhengli's team.
Oh, look, he's in the subway now.
First, on October 16, 2014, the Obama administration, wary of the potential threats to public health from the gain of...
Oh no, you see who that shadowy figure in the back there? It looks like it's Dr. Fauci.
GOF research into SARS, MERS, or influenza, announced through the National Institute of Health that it was suspending funding into similar research. The funding pause included Shi Zhengli's research project,
Not
genetic
Fauci.
engineering of SARS-like coronavirus in bats, a collaborative effort with Dr. Ralph Barrick.
No, if anything, he's saying that Barack Obama didn't do coronavirus because he stopped the gain-of-function research that they're going to claim Shenzhen Li continued the gain-of-function research, created the virus, and then like sent it out into the world at us.
Virologist at the University of North Carolina.
I'm probably going to have to stop and get a drink in a second before we
after
finish
the
this
Wuhan outbreak, Indian researchers compared the S protein sequence between 2019 nCoV and SARS. They discovered that 2019 nCoV had 4 new sequences inserted, all of which can be found in HIV sequences through a search on GenBank. Shi Zhengli discredited those observations, although she never denied the existence of the 4 inserted.
So this is important. Let's go over this again here. 1 second.
A virologist at the University of North Carolina. His research project.
Okay, we got that.
Engineering of SARS-like coronavirus in bats. A collaborative effort with Dr. Ralph Barrick, a virologist at the University of North Carolina. Second, after the Wuhan outbreak, Indian researchers compared the S protein sequence between 2019 nCoV and SARS.
Right, okay, so I remember this study. What they did was they took like the sequence and they compared it to a bunch of shit, and a bunch of shit lit up that it like was similar to, and one of those things happened to be HIV. And look how they take that, and what does that tell you? That doesn't tell you very much, because like viruses share a whole bunch of proteins. And if you do a scattershot approach where you just like research a whole bunch of proteins, you're going to see like a bunch of links popping up, right?
They discovered that 2019 nCoV had 4 new sequences inserted, all of which can be found in HIV sequences through a search on GenBank.
And notice how he also says inserted. Nothing about this said that they were actually inserted through some sort of like human like, boop, I put it in. Inserted just means there's new parts of the gene sequence that aren't common with existing SARS viruses. But of course, you use it. Yeah, go for it.
I really like how he's like, you can search this on GenBank. It's like, yeah, man, you got it.
Yeah.
You can search all these on GenBank. This is how it works.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this, but like a lot of protein information is available. Just get on the internet. There's a lot of databases out there. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah. You could do comparisons with stuff. That's something you can do.
Shi Zhengli discredited those observations, although she never denied the existence of the 4 inserted sequences. However, scientists probing GenBank found that there were only 3 viruses containing all sequences. The first is the HIV virus itself. The second is a bat coronavirus discovered by Xi. And the third is this new Wuhan coronavirus.
We've done this.
So again, that makes it sound... good night, Shai. Didn't realize Shai was going. As you can tell, there's like this idea that like because she was working on coronaviruses, so of course she would have discovered something like that. But like the relationship between it having similarities to HIV and whatnot, I'm not even sure if what I remember. I don't even think this Indian GenBank paper or whatever is still up. I think it got taken down. If I'm not mistaken, it was one that got retracted for its like shoddiness. See if I can get the name of this thing and look it up.
Protein sequence between 2019.
Let's. Can't tell if that's the title or not. Let's go. Uncanny similarity of unique inserts in the. Okay, let's pull that up. Oh, I love this. There's a warning on the website. Here, let's pull this up. It says BioRxiv, which is what published this, is receiving many new papers on coronavirus. A reminder, these are preliminary reports that have not been peer-reviewed. They should not be regarded as conclusive, guide clinical practice, health-related behavior, or be reported in the news as established information. So what we're learning is none of the things that he should be showing here are conclusive and shouldn't be reported in the news. And here we go. That's his source.
They discovered that
For now 40 years for me, there's this sequence analysis and comparison of the virus of the SARS-2 COVID-19 apparently has genes that come from other human and other species, including some envelope, the GP41.
Look at all the weird cuts they do on her
HIV.
stuff.
What is the HIV's GP41? The answer I found
She's
online
just fucking
describes
talking.
GP41 as a protein of HIV that acts as the key to infecting human bodies, resulting in the functional failure of the immune system. If the discovery by Judy and her colleagues are established, it would mean that the infectious part of the Wuhan virus, the S protein, incorporated the sequence of the HIV key protein. This made me think of the
Like, so he's just like, what Judy said is that the S protein is actually from HIV, and it's like, no, it's not. The S protein is from coronaviruses. We already went over this research. Jesus Christ. The challenge is discernment of information, truth or lies. Oh no. Is the more 76 someone who believes that these things are correct? The use of discernment has me worried. Tell me that it's a joke. Tell me it's a joke. The more 76, tell me it's a joke. Maybe with the title of my stream, it has attracted some truthers. But here we go.
immunodeficiency symptoms in people infected.
They were doing research on a human transmittable coronavirus that was actually published in a paper. So this is research that they actually published. They were working on developing a coronavirus for the human host, which, you know, leads you to question, why would you be creating a coronavirus that can infect humans?
So none of the research was that. They were studying the mutations themselves. Sure, what you're watching is a total joke. Okay, good. Then the more you're cool. Like, if you want it, like, yes, they were learning how these things could mutate and transmit, but they weren't learning or trying to create things to infect human hosts. That is not at all what they were doing.
What would be the purpose of that research? Is it for a weapon? Is it so that you can then
Is it for a weapon?
Vaccine that you are the sole recipient of the profits from? The Chinese have full access to our databases. They have full access to all that research that comes out. They have full access to all our universities to train their scientists, and they have full access to our scientists, like was, with the recent indictment of the head of the chemistry department at Harvard.
So I love like the reasoning here is that like of course they have to be whatever they're doing, of course has to be nefarious. It couldn't be that they care about learning this information. It couldn't be that like yes they do want to create vaccines to stop this thing. It couldn't be that they're working with our scientists in terms of like growing our knowledge for the same reason that we work with them, right? Like, of course, like American scientists working in American universities, they're all doing it for up and up reasons. It can't be at all that any of them work for the American military complex through Robert Spalding here. It can't be any of that. The Americans, when they do it, it's perfectly on the up and up. But if the Chinese are doing it, it's clearly because they want to design weapons or profit off of vaccines. It can't be for any other reason whatsoever.
I mean, this is
That's called poisoning the well, my friends.
Thousands of the most of the world's most brightest people in all of these different areas that are going to China to help them with their programs, and all of these programs, as you know, have a dual-use capability.
Beijing's attacks on the United States, which have occurred for weeks and weeks, are really worrying. What it shows is that China is desperate. And the United States needs to defend itself because China is propagating this narrative that we spread the coronavirus to China. So the United States needs to just come out with the facts about how China took coronavirus samples from Canada and the United States. They sent them to Wuhan. We don't know exactly what went on in that lab there at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, but it's time for the United States to defend itself.
So I guess like there was some back and forth with some Twitter person back in the day from who was in the Chinese government in some capacity, saying that the virus came from America, and then that was all that the people on the right could talk about was like they're trying to blame us good old Americans for creating the virus when really they did it, and like it was just a bunch of shit flinging. It was Canada all along. Yeah, so like there is some connection because there was an incident that I wanted to say happened at the University of Winnipeg. There was some scientist who worked, I don't know if it was at this lab or another lab in China. Oh my God. The more, what are you doing? You have one more strike and you're out of here, the more. I don't need you spreading conspiracy shit here.
Trudeau made coronavirus.
Yeah. So there was the scientists working at this lab in Winnipeg. One of them had connections with the Chinese government and was like detained, possibly with connections, like sharing information from this lab with the Chinese government. There was some incident that occurred that they all like lumped onto, saying that Canada was somehow involved with like helping this virology lab in Wuhan create this virus. That was a part of the narrative back when they were doing this. Although from what I could gather from this research scientist, it seemed like there wasn't necessarily something shady going on there, but they had like hid some, or they didn't disclose something, and so were detained and kept out, and now they can't go back into the facility. I can't remember the details on it, but like that's the connection. That's why they say Canada there. I'm guessing because they clearly didn't go into the details there, but like it was Gordon Chang who appears on The Rebel constantly. So my guess is, like a year ago when I researched this, that's why it's not fresh in my head. I think it comes from that. Dr. Robotnik made the virus. Pretty sure. Before we get into part 4, and hopefully it's not, I planned to like 3 hours would be my max and I'll dip out, but I don't think we're going to use the last of the full hour. But I'm going to quickly get a drink so that I'm not like for the rest of the stream. So give me 2 seconds and I will be right back. Vienno, you can entertain them if you want to, and Elron, I'll just be right back.
Hello. I feel like I have been left to exist for some reason. It's kind of like when the teacher leaves like the room during class, and I don't know, there's some like nerd who's like left to be like, oh, it's, we gotta be quiet, we gotta be polite, all those sorts of things, you know? I genuinely can't tell at this point if the more is like being a COVID truther or not. It's very confusing. The more, could you please type in the chat, coronavirus exists, please? I'm so confused at this point.
What's happening?
Oh, it's just kind of... I'm still confused about if the more is like anti-COVID
Yeah,
or pro-COVID. It's just like...
ban Mo. Ban Mo and Themore.
There is no coronavirus. I mean, I don't mind hearing them out. I'm ready to ban them if they continue down this line. But I am curious, since we're into it, tell us, why is there no coronavirus there? The more 76. Inform us.
I want to hear this.
Colds aren't real.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as viruses.
And for what it's worth, I have relatives that died of the virus. So if you want to say that my great uncle in fact died from something else, it's called germ theory. So wait, say the more.
Well, let's go Wikipedia germ theory real quick here.
So tell me why. So what? I can't even follow what you're saying here because it's text based, and that could just be a limitation of the medium. But you're saying germ theory. So do you think that it's a germ that's infecting people, or do you think like there's other things that we can do, like this virus is like I'm not sure I follow exactly what you're saying. What like tell me why germ theory? What about germ theory? If you can't see it, it doesn't exist. Yeah.
That's correct. Every time that I turn my back on something, it doesn't exist anymore.
I still love there's a great I was gonna say it was a great debate. I think it was Michael Shermer and Sam Harris, which are both people I don't care for nowadays. But they were debating Deepak Chopra and someone else. And at one point in the debate, Sam pushed Deepak Chopra to say that when Deepak Chopra is not looking at the moon is just a random swirling mess of probabilities.
If you cannot see, measure, or test something that it is not proven to exist, the scientific method.
So, do you not believe in like the tools that scientists use to measure things? Do you not believe that human cells are real? Like where do you draw the line? Like how much instrumentation involved make it beyond our human capacity of observation?
Jody, you're overthinking this. Protons, can't prove them. Physics, not real.
We can see cells under a microscope. So microscopes are okay. So at what point, though, at what level of magnification are you no longer accepting the tools that we use?
Light microscopes allowed, electron microscopes not allowed.
Fake. False. Electron microscopes are false. Electrons don't exist. We've been through this. There's no such thing as physics. Physics is a lie. It's a lie set up by big government.
Anytime somebody looks through an electron microscope, that is somebody put a little image on the bottom of
Computer-generated
that
images
thing.
by equipment you cannot use. But we're using the equipment. I just...
The more. My dude. The fuck are you talking about? What the fuck is this? You think because you use a computer center? Are you fucking... The more. Have you ever had an MRI?
You
Have you had one of those?
You cannot see COVID under a microscope.
I can't see the car in my driveway right now either, but I'm sure that it's there.
That's my question. The more. Have you had an MRI? Do you trust MRI imaging? Do you trust it?
I'm just trying to like what level, because like the more you got to realize like there's reasons we make inferences about the tools that we use to analyze these things, and so something like so you accept the cells because you can see them through a microscope, but you can't accept something like DNA or mRNA. MRI has nothing to do with an unproven theory. Are you saying wait?
You can't fucking use the more. It's computer-generated images, you fucking muck. What are you talking about? You just don't know what the fuck you're talking about, and you're getting on a chat and saying some bullshit about germ theory. COVID's real. Wear a fucking mask. All right, I'm done.
So what? Do you deny germ theory? Is that what you're saying? You're denying germ theory? I don't know if I want to talk to someone like this. The chat's enough because it's more keeps them a little bit forward. MRI is a magnetic imagery, not a computer. So you think that all research into like DNA or microscopic organisms or viruses is computer generated? Like there's no tools they use to like you're already going way beyond even this documentary, because at least this documentary believes that you could study DNA.
The more. Matt, you're gonna make me reach through this fucking screen. Do you really not know how MRI imaging works? I wouldn't expect you to, because it's not like most people do. But like K-space imaging, that's for your transforms, all of this shit that's integral to getting the MRI images. It's not like I put a magnet next to someone's head and then a picture pops out, right? That's not the way this works. You must understand that.
What does MRI stand for?
Do you know what the imaging part of magnetic resonance imaging is? Do you understand that there's a computer attached to that? Do you not know how this fucking shit works?
Okay.
Are you talking shit about shit you don't understand on Twitch as if you're a fucking genius? Are you? Answer my question, Tamor. Are you talking about shit you haven't done? It sounds like you are.
All right, everyone, go after the more in the chat. We're gonna go on. I will at the end of the stream. We'll block the more, but right now you can have fun with the more in the chat. It's at least on topic, even though it's incorrect. If they start saying some like racially insensitive stuff, feel free, moderators, to block them. But for now, let's hear out the germ denialism, and we'll go from there. But I'm gonna continue on with the show. You can all harass him in the chat. Harass here in the general sense of critique his position. I don't want to be accused of cyberbullying here. But if we continue on with this, we're never going to finish the documentary.
January 23rd, 2020. The Wuhan virus exploded. While Wuhan announced the lockdown of the city, Xi Jinping and her team released a paper stating that the Wuhan coronavirus was of probable bat origin. This was published in Nature on February 3rd. The paper indicated that the Wuhan virus utilized the same key as SARS to gain entry into the human body.
Okay.
She also announced
the music is very disorienting right now.
The 2019 NCOV genome sequence was 96.2% consistent with a bat coronavirus originating in Yunnan, China, called RATG13, signaling a natural source of the Wuhan virus. However, Xi Jinping's natural origin assertion was doubtful. The outbreak occurred in Wuhan.
Listen to this evidence. He reads all the evidence, and then Xi Jinping concludes, therefore it's natural, and he goes, but can it be natural? After all, the Wuhan lab is in the same area. Bum bum.
Same location as the P4 laboratory where Xi was based, and which housed highly similar viruses. Common sense would lead the government to first inspect the P4 laboratory for any leakage incident and potential safety concerns. Instead, they shifted public attention from the P4 laboratory to the South China seafood wholesale market that sold no bats, and designated it as the origin of the disease. At the same time, authorities sealed off all virus samples, prevented international experts from joining the investigation, and used national television to slander doctors such as Li Wenliang, who disclosed the outbreak for spreading rumors.
Now, it is true that this did happen, and this could be another incident where the Chinese government was in the wrong, rightfully so, and should be criticized for, which is that they accused this person of spreading rumors. They eventually died of the coronavirus, and as we can tell now, in hindsight, the Chinese government was wrong. They shouldn't have accused this person of spreading rumors, because they were in fact correct about how bad this virus was. Now, does that mean Again, does that mean that they created it in this lab and then released it on the world? No. But it is something that you can criticize the Chinese government for.
If the Wuhan virus indeed emerged naturally, why would the CCP need to censor relevant news or block investigations? Could the Wuhan P4 laboratory have its secrets? Virus samples and genome sequences may be the exact ingredients we need to find our answers.
When I first heard of the coronavirus, I was deeply concerned. Almost every disease that starts in China begins in Guangdong province, the province that surrounds Hong Kong, in the south. But Wuhan is in the central portion of the country. And so this was extremely unusual. It's not a conspiracy theory to think that the coronavirus came from the Wuhan lab. We don't know at this point. And until we know, the theory about the lab origin is certainly something that we should consider.
That's almost the Jordan Peterson level argument, isn't it? We don't know anything for sure. But since we don't know it for sure, it doesn't mean that it isn't happening. Here, Elron, I'll let you listen to that again.
No, I don't need. No, we're good.
Almost every disease that starts in China
Yeah.
extremely unusual. It's not a conspiracy theory to think that the
this.
coronavirus came from the Wuhan lab. We don't know at this point. And until we know, the theory about the lab origin is certainly something that we should consider.
So it's not a conspiracy to say that it came from the lab, because we don't know if it came from the lab. Therefore, it quite possibly could have come from the lab. I love Gordon Chang. Jesus Christ.
I noticed that after the outbreak, the Wuhan Institute of Virology kept strangely quiet. Under normal circumstances, as the nation's highest level of virology research institute, it should be the
Remember
first
being in
one
public
to
without a
actively
mask?
respond
Jesus Christ.
when the entire country is working around the clock, attempting to control a disease like this. One that so closely fits the type of viruses its scientists were researching.
The music,
In
Jesus
contrast,
Christ.
the Institute had a highly visible demonstration on CCTV of their efforts to detect and prevent the outbreak of virus V in pigs of Guangdong in 2018. It should be noted that the Wuhan Institute displayed a series of abnormal events since the start of 2020.
All right.
January 2nd, an email from the Director General of the Institute to all internal staff was circulated. The subject was notice regarding the...
So again, we can't confirm or deny that this is legitimate sources here. This is them just saying that this stuff was leaked. And it says, notice regarding the strict prohibition of disclosure of any information related to the Wuhan unknown pneumonia. So they're going to be showing these leaked chats, which are somehow indicative of a cover-up.
strict prohibition of disclosure of any information related to the Wuhan unknown pneumonia. National Health Commission clearly mandates that all detection, empirical data, results, and conclusions related to this outbreak cannot be published on self-media or social media, nor disclosed to any media, including state media, or collaborative organizations, including any technical services companies.
I do want to say, like, if that document is true, or that chat message is true, is that really... No, you're blocked now. Don't you be sharing faulty crap like that. There you go. You're gone! You're canceled. Don't share your propaganda bullshit. Get the hell out of here. You could have played it safe. You could have just chatted about your denialism, and we would have been fine with that. Not gonna
Mod Towers is fun.
Yeah. What was I gonna say about this? Oh yeah, like that chat was pretty, like, I don't know. You would think that, like, global pandemic is going. You might want to say, like, hey, let's not, like, rush to leak this stuff to the public when we haven't, like, fully analyzed material or something like this, right? That is perfectly reasonable. For the same reason of why, like, clearly these people are going to take whatever information gets leaked and read it in the most negative light possible. And then make an evil-sounding documentary about it.
A new drug, remdesivir, provided for free by the United States to China.
I see people with mouth masks on all the time. Yeah, I know.
Was preemptively patented by the Institute. February 3rd, Dr. Wu Xiaohua blew the whistle using his real name that Xi Zhengli's haphazard laboratory management.
So this is, I remember at the time looking into this and couldn't find out if this person was real or not. But they're like, it's a real person and it's definitely a whistleblower. And all I could link this back to was Epoch Times news articles and like conspiracy theory message boards. I cannot find any information that what we're about to read right now is true at all.
May have led the Wuhan virus to leak from the lab. February 4th, chairman of Duoyi, Shu Bo, blew the whistle using his real name that the Wuhan Institute of Virology was suspected of manufacturing and leaking the Wuhan virus. February 7th.
So what I love about this one too, I remember looking into it, this is a real person, but they're not like, what does it say?
Blew the whistle using his real name.
So it's like some chairman of a company who's like... So it's like some guy, some random dude said that this thing was leaking. Great.
That the Wuhan
Great evidence.
Institute of Virology was suspected of manufacturing and leaking the Wuhan virus. February 7th, top biochemical weapon expert of the People's Liberation Army, Chen Wei, officially assumed control over Wuhan Institute of Virology's P4 laboratory. February 14.
Now, that comment about the person taking over the laboratory, I can imagine a scenario in the United States where there's like some disease originated, it's unknown, we're kind of worried about it, we're scrambling to mobilize things, and therefore the military gets involved with a laboratory that's studying these things. That would make perfect sense to me, that would happen in America. It doesn't necessitate that there's some cover-up going on here. It could just be that maybe the military wants to know what's going on, and therefore they're now in close communications. Because if the military has to be mobilized to do something, do quarantine or lockdowns or whatever, they might need to know what they're working with or something like that. I don't know. Or it could be a cover-up. But here's the thing is, you don't just get to use that as evidence and then speculate about it, right? Give me something more than just the fact that this thing happened.
Chinese leader Xi Jinping called for the inclusion of biosecurity into China's national security framework and to accelerate the introduction of a biosecurity law. February 15, the Institute refuted widely spread rumors on Chinese social media that a female graduate, Huang Yanling, was patient zero and had perished. However, Huang's photo, CV, and thesis were all removed from the Institute's official website, leaving only her name.
Like...
So there's a conspiracy going around about somebody, and so they remove the private and identifying information about that person so that that person probably isn't being doxxed by their name going around in conspiracy theories.
But not all of it.
How irresponsible.
But not all of it, because the Epoch Times found some of that information still on the website. But even then, what is supposed to be the conspiracy theory here? Because if the government says that this person was patient zero, and again, I don't know for a fact that it came from the government, it could have just been anyone randomly saying it. What does he just say here? He goes, the Institute refuted widely spread rumors on Chinese social media. Okay, so it's just rumors on Chinese social media.
Yeah, so like the university did or the institute or whatever did something very responsible in removing all but like the most basic information about this girl or this woman, because again, like removing her photo, identifying her CV probably has contact information on it.
Yeah.
And like,
but again,
else, like that.
I mean, aside from the what they're trying to make nefarious of the removal of the material, just think about what's being said here. The Institute refuted widely spread rumors on Chinese social media that female graduate Huang Yanling was patient 0 and had perished. So it's like they refuted these rumors. Now, they don't offer like what the refutation was. Right? Maybe there was like a good refutation in that like she doesn't work here anymore, like we don't know anything, right? And they were rumors. So it's like then they go, yeah, but they deleted her image from like these websites.
Well, like she obviously still works for them. They probably just said, no, she didn't have fucking COVID and she's not dead. Like,
yeah, I mean that could have been it too. I'm gonna just Google this.
Jody, there is still 20 minutes left of this documentary. We cannot Google every little thing.
I know, but I was just curious. Here, I'll push play.
Yan Ling was patient 0 and had perished. However, Huang's photo, CV, and thesis were all removed from the Institute's official website, leaving only her name. February 17, Institute researcher Chen Chuanjiao blew the whistle using her real name that Director General of the Institute, Wang Yanyi, was suspected of leaking the virus.
I graduated from the University of Virginia in 1980. My first job was to go to the National Cancer Institute.
So we're gonna again, whatever. You're a fraud. The the interesting thing about that, they always have to specify. It's like using the real name, because it's like, how am I supposed to know this is a real person? Like just because you have some like leaked thing that you shoved up on your documentary.
Which was housed at Fort Detrick, Maryland, the same place that houses the USAMRIID, U.S. Army Research Institute on Infectious Disease, the biosafety level 4 facility, equivalent of the Wuhan facility. And so at these facilities, it's where investigators who I went in there myself, you can see the breakdowns in safety, and it's everywhere. That's why I have no doubt the Chinese biosafety level 4, it was just as lacking in safety, in rigor. You can argue that they don't care.
Suspected of...
So I look up this person. Huang Yanling is still alive. In response, Huang's supervisor, Wei Hongping, said, Huang Yanling has been working in another city since her graduation in July 2015. I called her and confirmed that she's in good health and everything is fine. But they removed her pictures from the university website, therefore. Isn't it lovely? Isn't it lovely that you could just post that in your documentary and think you could get away with it? Jesus fucking Christ.
Leaking the virus. Military biochemical weapons expert assumes control. Biosecurity law. Now, when these sensitive keywords are connected together, it tells me that the P4 laboratory is not an ordinary academic research institute. I decided to start from the beginning of the Wuhan P4 lab. On January 23rd, the day Wuhan was locked down, French website challenges.fr published an article that revealed many details of the collaboration between France and China to establish the P4 laboratory in Wuhan. In 2003, after the SARS outbreak in China, the Chinese Academy of Sciences requested assistance from the French government to build a virology research center of the highest level. With the support of then French Prime Minister Raffarin, the two countries signed a contract to jointly construct the
Look at them, they're touching the ball.
Under a wave of contention. According to the contract, French architect RTV in Lyon was responsible for the engineering of the laboratory. However, Chinese authorities switched the work to a local Wuhan architect,
oh no,
IPPR, based on research conducted by the General Directorate of External Security. IPPR had close ties to subsidies of the Chinese military, some of which were already targets of concern by the American CIA.
So it's like the person or like the company that built the building had ties with the Chinese government and military. Okay? Because they're building a secure facility? You would think that, like, you're building a secure facility because you don't want things like information leaks or viral leaks and all this fun stuff. So they go to the military, and that's a bad thing. Why?
Also, the evidence is that somebody who built stuff for the Chinese military is a target of concern by the American CIA.
Yeah.
Who wants to destroy the Chinese military. Like,
Yeah. I mean, like, they're just like, and the thing was built by China, which is a concern of the American CIA. Got him. We got him.
Within the 12 subsidiary departments, there was even a specific military management office. The French delayed repeatedly, given security concerns.
I guarantee you there's going to be military involvement in research in America as well.
And French security continued to suspect that the Chinese regime was conducting biochemical weapons experiments. Who is the real
Who concluded
boss?
that?
It wasn't until 2017 before
okay.
the Wuhan P4 laboratory was operational, and French security continued to suspect that the Chinese regime was conducting biochemical weapons experiments. Who is the real boss of the P4 laboratory? The Wuhan P4 laboratory was a subsidiary of the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which is managed by China Academy of Sciences. The director of the laboratory was Yuan
Oh yeah, we're gonna get
who was also the head of China's Academy of Sciences.
You know, it seems more conspiratorial when you have like a cork board with strings attached to it, but when you do it graphically, it looks a lot cooler. But really, it's the same thing, right? No, zero government involvement in America. Just good old-fashioned bootstrap scientists. Apparently, you saying Chinese. Of course, they're a target of concern for the CIA, and it might be completely legitimate for the CIA to be worried about the people in the Chinese military, but that is not evidence of the Chinese government's creation of COVID-19. Well, yeah, but like,
we're gonna deny that message. Don't let it go through.
No, I'll allow it.
No.
Apparently, it got flagged because you said Chinese. But here's the thing: is maybe the CIA should. But here's the thing: is like I don't trust the CIA. You can invest your trust, progressive. I am not going to trust them. But either way, even if China was like the worst thing and should be a concern, simply being a concern does not mean that whatever happened here was nefarious. Because again, you need like actual evidence here, right?
Wuhan chapter. Design and funding for construction were the responsibilities of the ex-vice presidents of the academy. Jiang Mianheng from 1999 to 2011, and Chen Zhu from 2000 to 2007. Jiang Mianheng was the eldest son of ex-CCP leader.
Oh, now we're getting to eldest son.
After Jiang Zemin ascended to power after the Tiananmen Square massacre, his son entered the academy and led the Institute of High Technologies Research and Development. Jiang Mianheng created the Shanghai Institute of Life Sciences, and together with China Academy of Sciences, Shanghai colleges and universities, Shanghai hospitals, military hospitals and research institutions, formed a profit group of life sciences organizations. They controlled China's major life sciences research projects and allocation of massive funding. Jiang Jicheng, son of Jiang Mianheng,
I just love this.
is the
Like, it's
controlling shareholder of Wuxi AppTech, which in turn is controlling Fosun Pharmaceutical.
like I feel like this is gonna be like it's a Glenn Beck thing on the chalkboard.
Effectively, Jiang Jicheng is the kingpin behind the specific
Kingpin
medicine for the outbreak. Meanwhile, Chen Zhu is the current president of the Red Cross Society of China, which had faced numerous scandals since the outbreak. In 1999, while
You know, like all these connections might be true, and it's still just like, yes, people who are connected with the Chinese government are connected with people who work at high research facilities. True, because they're not That's how they run their system there. Cool. Like again, you connecting all these dots don't tell me that they actually designed the virus there.
While Jiang Zemin was in power, the People's Liberation Army published a book, Unrestricted Warfare, in which strategies for a weaker nation to combat a stronger nation are discussed in the context of modern warfare. One of the authors, Qiao Liang, wrote, "After the first Taiwan Strait crisis, we realized that if the Chinese and American military fought head-on, we are at a disadvantage. Therefore, we need a new strategy to help our military tilt the balance of power. This new strategy is called unrestricted warfare, a variety of means beyond all limits, without any restrictions. It could be military related, including guerrilla warfare, terrorism, biochemical warfare, or it could be non-military related, such as drug trafficking,
You're
poison,
gonna love this. This
environmental
whole piece is done
destruction,
here.
and computer virus dissemination." Israeli expert in
So you notice like the fear mongering there and all the graphics all for this thing. So this book was written by two retired colonels in the of the Chinese military, and it was written to be like a speculative novel of just like, okay, we're not as technologically advanced as some other nations. How might we beat a technologically more powerful opponent? What are some of the things that we can do? And they speculate on various like things that they could do to beat a more technologically advanced opponent, right? Now, you would think if this was like a part of some sort of grand narrative, that you wouldn't allow your colonels to like release this information, some like secret information of how to beat a more technologically like powerful thing, but they were just going, how do you do it? And they released this book to the public. It's printed, you can read it. They sold it. And it just offers like speculation. If they do this, here's what we can do. Like, you know, this kind of shit has been like written. You know what it reminds me of? Alex Jones does this all the time, where he'll like write about people talking about population control and what are like the best methods of like population control, and then we'll draw from that this person was like told by the government to write this thing, and if you read in between the lines, this is their secret plan to like cull the Earth's population and like allow the elites to rule. Right, so he does this with the population bomb by Paul Ehrlich. It's like somehow secret, the secret government document of population control. Where it's like, no, Paul Ehrlich wrote a book and speculated on some things. That doesn't mean that this is the government's plan to do X, Y, and Z. So that's what that whole segment that we just watched was them going, look, there's this book that talks about unrestricted warfare, written by two retired generals. And somehow this is like evidence of like, see, the Chinese are secretly evil. Their whole plan is to like manipulate us through unrestricted warfare. They wrote about it in a book. That's all it is.
The thing is, too, like, even if they had written and widely published a book that was like, you know, an actual government stance, China is a nation that has faced invasion multiple times by technologically superior empires that have then like killed millions and millions of people. So it makes sense for them to try to consider what they could do in the face of technologically superior enemies, considering that there is another technologically superior empire right at their door.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's stupid. It's just... It's like if you just find anything... I mean, it's the same thing. You could do it with anything and just show, like, oh, look, this book is talking about military stuff, therefore, right? And then, like, spread a conspiracy theory about it. But, like, so these people wrote a book. Cool. But that's evidence of the cover-up.
A book was published in Denmark about American war crimes.
Yeah.
We must invade.
Biological warfare and former intelligence officer Danny Shoham published a paper in 2015 in India's Journal of Defense Studies. He pointed out that China will not miss, skip, or abandon any highly advanced technology. especially military-related technology. The article noted that China had 12 facilities related to the Ministry of National Defense and 30 subsidiary facilities of the PLA participating in the research, development, manufacturing, testing, or storage of biological weapons.
So again, I don't know if any of this is true. This is an American writing for some Indian article here. And again, for those who don't know, India and China have a prolonged conflict along the border of the area of Tibet over the Himalayas. And those conflicts have reignited recently as well. So, you know, to what extent this is accurate or not, I'll just leave it up in the air. But, like, clearly there's a possible bias coming out of this. Affiliated with the defense plus 30 facilities for the PLA that are involved in research, development, production. Yeah, again, like, how do we know that this is true? I don't know. And here's the thing: is like America's. I'm guessing that America studies this shit too. And is that harmful? I don't know. You be the guess. I mean, they deployed a bunch of chemical weapons on their own population in Portland all of last summer. So.
Federation of American Scientists indicated similar concerns in an evaluation report. The organization believed that the CCP possessed advanced chemical warfare projects, including research, development, manufacturing, and weaponizing capabilities. The CCP is usually known to have a proactive biological warfare portfolio.
Are they?
Including state-funded and sponsored research activities.
Like, look at how fucking slimy that is. Just, like, listen to what he said.
Funded and sponsored.
Oh, I didn't go back far enough.
Capabilities. The CCP is usually known.
The CCP is usually known. The CCP is usually known by who? From what sources?
To have a
proactive. You notice it's proactive because they want to get ahead of it and do it. And it's usually known.
I believe they have them. I believe they're developing them. I think.
Oh, good. Robert Spalding believes that they have it. So therefore, it's true.
Biological weapons, the same as I believe that they do.
The guy who's been a consistent China war hawk clearly knows that he believes that they have it.
Concentration camps for Uyghurs. The way I believe that they have systematically killed millions of Falun Gong.
And I believe
this regime. You can count on it.
So did he just say they killed millions of the Falun Gong?
They have
systematic killing
camps for
of
Uyghurs.
Falun Gong.
The way I believe that they have systematically killed millions of Falun Gong.
What? What? I've never heard that claim. Now, for those who don't know, Epoch Times is financially backed by the Falun Gong movement, who might have an invested interest in this claim, which is why this dude is appearing in the documentary, even though the Falun Gong is a fascist cult. And if you want to know more about that, in our next episode, the podcast episode, I go into great detail about that. Not great detail, sufficient detail.
It is the same thing, this regime. You can count on it.
So Wuhan is an area.
Oh, we got a new person.
By the fact that
Anthony Schaefer,
concern
former
about
CIA
China's
trained intelligence
ambitions
officer.
are regarding long-term global domination. I'll just say it that. Their military doctrines indicated that they intend to be the dominant political and military force in the Pacific Rim. I've talked to senior members of the Trump administration who have had conversations with the senior Chinese generals, and that's what they basically say. It's in their doctrine too. So we have to examine this new clue. This is one piece of the, Wuhan, biological warfare. Does this mean something to these other things we're already seeing? Because the Chinese have already kind of stated this is their objective. So I think we have to analyze it through that lens. What does this mean to the larger political narrative of what China wants to do to dominate the region and potentially the world?
So that's his conclusion. China wants to dominate the world. Okay, prove it. But then apparently Anthony Schaefer is a retired U.S. Army Reserve Lieutenant Colonel who gained fame for his claims about mishandled intelligence before the September 11th attacks and for the censoring of his book, Operation Dark Heart. Okay. After coming under investigation over an alleged pattern of misconduct while deployed as a staff officer in Afghanistan, Long-distance phone charges he incurred for personal calls. That was his misconduct, was long-distance phone charges incurred for personal calls. Schaefer responded by alleging that the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency failed to properly pass on intelligence on 9/11 hijacker Mohammed Atta. Schaefer's allegations subsequently became known as the Able Danger controversy. Interesting.
Literally insane that you're more likely to be investigated for long-distance phone charges than just murdering civilians. But this person obviously has the world's best interests at heart.
Yeah. Interesting. Their sources are always so fun on this Epoch Times documentary. Let's see what Gordon Chang has to follow up on.
We don't have to speculate about being at war. Last May, the Communist Party, through People's Daily, carried a piece which said that there was a quote-unquote people's war against the United States. They've declared war on us. We have to respond. There is a war. China's told us there's one.
Now, this was the trade war shenanigans that was happening before the pandemic spread? Don't bite the hand that feeds you self-confidence. So it's like, oh my god, Chang. I don't even have to go into detail there. Basically, there was trade war shit happening. Everyone talked about it being a trade war. I mean, Trump called it a trade war. But then to say it's like, well, you don't have to be a brain surgeon to know that, like, we're at war with China. No, we're not. Facing the Pandemic, Part 5. Oh, we're going to get to someone without a neck.
The Wuhan coronavirus pandemic has spread to about 190 countries with no signs of slowing down. The United States announced a state of national emergency. Europe became the new center of the outbreak. The world's largest art museum, the Louvre, and the Eiffel Tower closed to the public.
Oh no.
Tragic scenes, previously only
Not
found
the
in
Eiffel
Hollywood
Tower.
films, are now playing out live on the world stage. And given how closely it seemed to align with the Chinese regime's narratives, I can't help but question the role the WHO had in this catastrophic pandemic.
Well, I think all you have to do is look at the photo of Tedros and Xi shaking hands. Xi standing there, Tedros going up to there, and
Oh, can I get body language?
is indicative of how China controls many of these.
What? Oh my god!
The head of the WHO shook hands with the leader of the largest by population country on the planet. That is proof that they're collaborating and have decided to spread COVID to the world.
Yep. Well, didn't you see Tedros had, like, look, he's bending the knee slightly, I guess. Like, I think what they're trying to get at with that image.
Is look at the photo of Tedros.
Just look at the photo.
Shaking hands.
Boom! Like, I look at this. All I had to do was look at this image, and I knew they were in on it. You could. I mean, they're smiling. They're smiling. Look at it. I need like a red line drawer, or I'll do the green line, dude. Although, look, they're pretty straight angles, you know? Maybe Tedros is bent a little forward, so there's like... He's losing his masculine ability because the green line is on an angle. I don't know. Yeah.
To the rule of Xi Jinping.
Seagull Bomb says, also, if you zoom in real close, you could see the mouth, Hail Hydra.
Standing there, Tedros going up to there, and it really is indicative of how China controls many of these international institutions. You can see
just controls them.
The WHO is essentially following Chinese Communist Party's guidelines. You can see that the UN Human Rights Council...
You can see all of this. You can see all of this just by that fucking picture.
Coronavirus outbreak. The Communist Party has done its best to prevent the CDC and others from studying the origin of this disease. We don't know what's there, but the fact that the Communist Party is covering this up should trouble us deeply.
Then you see the World Health Organization take over YouTube. And what's amazing is now...
This guy doesn't have a neck. Just pause on that for a second, figure out who this person is. And why he's all of a sudden here. He's an investigative journalist. Okay. James Grundvig? James Grundvig. Works for the Epoch Times. Well, that's great. I mean, he just works for the Epoch Times. Okay.
Now at the bottom of every YouTube video, even from Chris Martenson with his daily updates, he's just reading facts. Now it's the World Health Organization is a forced link to go to the site. So for any person who doesn't know who the World Health Organization, they go there to get the propaganda, not the facts, not the truth. They get the propaganda, they get the talking points from the World Health Organization. And that is also it's a shame that American corporations, especially social media, like Google, like Facebook and Twitter, they're trying to censor or ban or shadow ban or manipulate algorithms, so on and so forth, to prevent an actual honest conversation. The best way this is going to be answered, all this, we want the truth.
The biggest issue.
So I learned something else about James Grundvig. He wrote a book called Master Manipulator, The True Story of Fraud, Embezzlement, and Government Betrayal at the CDC, which is an anti-vaccine book because apparently the CDC has manipulated data on vaccines in coordinated effort to control the message that vaccines do not cause autism. So he's promoting the idea that vaccines cause autism, which I remind you was started from Andrew Wakefield, who is a noted fraud, who manipulated his trial before it was eventually removed from the Lancet. And it has the foreword by Robert Kennedy Jr., who's probably most prominently known for being a Kennedy, but also for being an anti-vaccine quack. So, that is who they just had on their show. Someone who works for the Epoch Times and is a raging vaccine denialist. That's great. He's going to be the source that we go to when we want to know about viruses.
I've learned over my 40-year career, it's not really fighting the viruses and learning how to treat the viruses. It's fighting a system that is determined to cover up and persecute anyone who reveals the truth behind.
The World Bank.
Because when I stole the data from the university, they didn't treat me very nicely, and now I don't have a
If the
job.
Chinese Communist Party tells them to do it, they're going to do it. I'm not surprised at all by what the WHO says. I'm not surprised at all by ICAO, which basically has been blocking people from that tweet about Taiwan. I mean, the whole system, and this is why, by the way, the national security strategy that came out in December 2017 says what it says, which is we need to protect our societies, not just
They're
the United
editing.
States, but all
Jesus
democracies.
Christ.
We need to rebuild them, not invest Chinese Communist Party regime in the Belt and Road Initiative and Made in China 2025. And we need to inspire people again to believe in democracy.
Every country has diseases, but in China, they become national emergencies and global emergencies because the real disease here is communism.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
The best part is like, again, this was April, so the virus had just, like, started picking up speed. But, like, have we heard about what happened in China lately? Like, let's look up the deaths from COVID in China. Oops, let's go China. COVID. And I'll click here, deaths. Oh, we only got new data. So right now it says China mainland, 4,636 deaths. Now, I don't know how accurate this number is, but let's just say even it was slightly low, it's likely not going to be that much higher than this because there's only so much you could cover up people dying or something like this. When if you were to compare Gordon Chang's home country, where we're now at 538,000 deaths. So, Yeah. It's communism that's the problem, apparently. It's communism that's the problem. Thanks, Gordon Chang. It's the diseases we made along the way.
A sprawling and aggressive disinformation campaign unleashed globally by the Chinese Communist Party. The propaganda push, which has escalated in recent weeks, aims primarily to deflect blame over the Chinese regime's botched handling of the Wuhan coronavirus, to sow discord internationally, and to portray the image that the regime has contained the outbreak. During the investigative interview process, well-known scientists who once suggested a laboratory origin of the virus declined to be interviewed one after another. Some avoided the topic of virus origin completely. Some had already composed scientific arguments but abruptly retracted their papers. I felt as if a giant net of censorship was cast by the CCP over virologists around the world. Silence at this time could have consequences for the health and lives of billions of people.
Yeah. I wonder...
All virologists are China shills.
Yeah. Well, I wonder as well, like, who was silenced? Who was silenced about their own vaccination because he was worried about pissing off the anti-vaccine supporters he had? Donald Trump? You know, like, Jesus fucking Christ. If anything, it was his silence that, like, allowed for the perpetuation of this thing in their country. So it's like, you're... And he's the one, like, from the non-communist, pro-capitalist country who did everything he can to try to, like, bolster his own image. I did want to say to Progressive American, Robert F. Kennedy has a lot of weird connections, and in part, I think that's because of the money and his family name. So, if you want to know another really interesting connection, he is a part of a network called the Ring of Fire Network, which hosts people like the Majority Report with Sam Cedar. Even though Sam Cedar is not anti-vaccine and has been very clear that he's not anti-vaccine on his show. And this was brought up on the show recently. And Sam Cedar is like, Robert has been involved in some activism that's legitimate in terms of like removing chemicals from like water supplies and stuff like this and other environmental issues. But then it's like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. somehow went from that to therefore like chemicals in the vaccines are bad for you, pseudoscience nonsense, right? And so it's like sad because he made all these connections. He has a lot of left-wing activism, bona fides, but then like moved and used it towards like anti-vaccine shit, and now has just gone completely off the deep end. I still don't want to associate with the person who fearmongered about me as an autistic person because of vaccines. Well, yes. I'm not going to go that far. I'm just saying that, like, even, like, some of these associations are tenuous. Like, it could just be that Robert F. Kennedy is giving money to networks that host various people or whatnot. But yeah, he's a pretty disgusting person for going down this route for sure.
And I try to make my own assessment. And a lot of the time, you can figure out what's really going on by what they're not saying. And in this case, there's a lot of things not being said.
Bottom line. They want to make money from China.
There are many things not being said. He's right.
You know what? You know what? Strangely, missing from what he just said was all the information about the people that he supposedly murdered. And you know what? There's just a lot being said in what's not being said. You know what I mean? Like, what a fucking dumb argument.
Exactly.
Jesus.
You know, like, China hasn't brought up anything about, like, capybaras recently. What if they're the source of COVID?
Or no, you know what? They're training an army of capybaras to sick on the rest of the world. And that's, the silence is deafening. It's deafening.
They're buying so much beef from Brazil specifically to hide importations of capybara. Checkmate, liberals.
Oh, Lord.
They fear the Chinese repercussions if they air this stuff. It just gives you an indication of how powerful the Chinese Communist Party is.
They're so powerful.
Chinese Communist Party suppressing speech in the West because these companies make money from China and they're afraid that they're not going to make. The Chinese Communist Party is going to punish them if they essentially publish this stuff or allow it to be aired. There is no other reason.
I think we...
Think about how, like, stupid that argument is. They're suppressing speech because they're like, we'll give you money, and then the people take the money, and then they go, but if you say things we don't like, we're going to take that money back. So then those people don't speak out. And here's the thing is, that does happen, and I would say it is bad, but it's not suppressing your free speech, because you could have just not fucking taken that money in the first place, or you could say, take that money back and say the things that you want to say. You're making a choice by not speaking. That's not suppressing speech. Suppressing speech.
Don't you understand? China has to obey the First Amendment.
Yeah.
The global constitution is important.
Well, he's talking about what's going on in America through, like, Chinese investment. But, like, again, like, there's nothing stopping the company from saying, no, China, don't give me the money.
We have to recognize, your audience who haven't seen it, I highly recommend Chernobyl, because the same basic governance.
This was a huge narrative back then as well. And the Rebel was doing it all the time, which is like what's happening with the coronavirus is equivalent of what happened in Russia during Chernobyl.
That potential here. I'm not saying it's going to be that bad. I'm just saying that the party, the central party, is the thing which they want to protect, their power. And people and nation issues are secondary to the continuation of power.
Communist Party is malign and it is grossly irresponsible. It has pressured governments to keep their borders open, and it had to know that that would result in the fast spread of coronavirus.
What? What? Okay, go on, Vienna.
I didn't have anything else.
You just hate. Yeah.
Like,
I guess he's like, how else do I appeal to far right Americans? I gotta tell them that their borders are under attack by the Chinese government because they want the coronavirus to spread. There's a lot of like that nonsense coming out right now since Biden has been elected, and they're saying that, like, especially in Texas, they're complaining that Biden's policies are increasing immigrant influx into the United States, and they're bringing with them the coronavirus. But for all, I think recently a report came out, I think it was like just yesterday I was reading it, showing that there's like the population in Texas has a higher rate of COVID than the people coming into Texas. So it's actually a danger to the immigrants in terms of COVID to be going to Texas right now. Isn't that fun? But of course, we got to worry about the immigrants bringing the coronavirus because it's not endemic to our states now.
To other countries. This is the worst sort of behavior. And the world's got to understand that there will not be peace, there will not be good order and stability in the world as long as the Communist Party rules China.
The Wall Street Journal writes a piece as China is a sick man of Asia. It needs to be corrected. It's not China is a sick man of Asia. It is the Communist Chinese Party that's a sick man of Asia.
The Communist Party
nailed it.
Policies that people abhor.
That man without a neck
it's
really,
not just
really
its reaction to the
drove that home.
coronavirus. We see this with the suppression of rights, also with holding perhaps 1 million people, maybe even 3 million people in concentration camps. So this is just the essential nature of Chinese communism.
1 million to 3 million people being in camps. That is such a large discrepancy to not have like all the information regarding. Especially, like, right now with this stuff happening?
they can just say any number, because they already said that they killed several million Falun Gong members as well.
Yes. It's almost like...
There's actually... The only people in China are actually Xi Jinping and, like, the, 3 levels down in the party apparatus. Everybody else has already been killed.
Yeah. No, they could start saying 1 billion people in concentration camps. Because isn't China just one big concentration camp? These numbers are just so stupid.
Chinese communism is evil.
While China
Nailed
pretends
it.
to be a responsible member of the international community, in reality, they are doing much to undermine the rule of law and human rights. We at the Epoch Times refer to the Wuhan coronavirus, or COVID-19, as the CCP virus.
Got him. Got him.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
I like it's like announcing like a rebranding. We're rebranding what we used to racistly refer to as the Wuhan virus as the CCP virus. So by connecting it with the government, we're no longer racist.
That's one way to do it. Sure. Got me there.
Because the Chinese Communist Party's cover-up
Oh,
and
dear Lord.
mishandling allowed the virus to spread throughout China and create a global pandemic. On March 24th, Texas lawyer Larry
Oh my God.
Clayton filed a complaint in Texas federal court seeking at least $20 trillion from the Chinese government.
What? Why? Why are they?
Because that's how lawsuits work.
No, wait. You're gonna want to know about this guy. Larry Klayman is an American right-wing activist lawyer and former U.S. Justice Department prosecutor. He founded both Judicial Watch and Freedom Watch, which are both terrible things.
You know, if only there was some sort of like criminal court of the world, or like international justice crimes court. I don't know. Maybe like an international criminal court, maybe.
Yeah, if only. So Clayman's been involved in so much shit. I just love, he's had so many sanctions too. Like, following Clayman's behavior in a 1992 trial in California federal court, Judge William Duffy Keller barred him from his courtroom for life. He got banned from court for life. What else has he done? I mean, he defended the Bundy people, so the people who took over that ranch in Oregon. I think it was in Oregon? That was in Oregon, right? Yeah. I feel like he was the one representing Roger Stone at some point too. Oh no, Jerome Corsi. Okay, yeah. He was defending Jerome Corsi, who Roger Stone threatened to kill his dog, which was part of the reason why Roger Stone went to jail. Anyways, he's one of these like lawyers who's been around for everything.
Siegelbaum in the chat also said that he's an Alex Jones regular. So.
Yeah. He defended George Zimmerman as well, so, lovely person. Oh, he also worked with Laura Loomer. Pardon?
Should have led with the Zimmerman thing. Holy shit.
Yeah. Well, he filed a lawsuit on defense of him. I don't think he defended George Zimmerman in the trial.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, okay, Klayman filed this lawsuit. This, like, wacky lawyer that no one respects.
People, but their government is not, and it must be made to pay dearly. On April 4th, the British think tank Henry Jackson Society advocated for compensation of £351 billion from the CCP to the UK. And that the government should pursue it through international courts.
And the fact that none of us have heard about any of these things, let me guess how well this has worked out for them.
G7 for the damages caused by the cover-up of the outbreak. On the same day, the All India Bar Association filed a complaint to the United Nations Human Rights Council, seeking an unspecified amount as reparations from China over the global spread of the coronavirus. Evidently, the CCP violated the international health regulations. The United States and the international community must regain their senses and take action. Reveal the truth through investigations, initiate sanctions against the CCP, and seek massive restitution for the worldwide public health emergency resulting in tremendous health and economic loss. As the people of Taiwan and Hong Kong are insisting, Only by trying to stay away from the CCP's invasion can we protect ourselves in this global disaster.
So we need to
Let's start
ask for restitution
protecting
from
ourselves. Let's start
China?
rebuilding our country. Let's start investing in our people. Let's start inspiring people to love democracy and transparency and open markets, not what the Chinese have, which is essentially, if you read document number 9, counter to every single one of those things.
Oh, document
There's
number
this real
9.
opportunity to kind of reevaluate the kind of world we want to live in and fight for the right side of that world. I want them to see the true nature of the Chinese Communist Party, because when they do, they're going to wake up. And when that happens, democracies will begin to flourish again. And when that happens, perhaps, just perhaps, the people of China will have a chance.
This virus
chance at
must
what?
have a message for all of us as people of this
Yeah, I
earth.
know.
We need to take a
A
break
chance
from
at
our
being
busy
like
schedules
us,
and seriously
Americans.
consider the repercussions of our ever-expanding scientific research and development. Did we go too far?
Oh
Will
yeah,
our
it's the
desires
science has
and
gone too far
ambitions
argument.
go against the laws of nature and pull us further from the direction.
So again, laws of nature, like this language is part of the Falun Gong movement, which believes that like we must return to like our rightful nature, which is a very fascistic concept. And it leads to them to believe, because they believe something like aliens engaged in race mixing, and that's why Mexicans are bad or something. This is the Falun Gong cult. Nonsense.
Yeah, aliens encouraged the mixing of races, and that's why the peoples of, and I'm just trying to think, I think it's Mexico, Latin America, and
Yeah, are clearly
like
not right.
Southeast Asia are all like doomed because they're, especially, they have mixed races, and therefore like the humanity aspect is losing or whatever, or they're going to hell or whatever it is.
Because we all know those aliens, they just love the race mixing. That's totally real.
Given by heaven. Maybe when this virus lifts, we can again find our traditional values, rediscover kindness
Traditional values. Like listen to like the way he's talking here. Jesus, rediscover kindness.
and virtue, family and community. I believe that viruses can't survive.
Oh
where
my
hearts
God.
have compassion.
Oh, I fucking love that line. I believe that viruses can't survive where hearts have compassion. CEO Bob just said, I really did enjoy having someone come in saying, these people are crazy, thinking viruses are real. Yes, thank you, the more, for the laughs. But that's the documentary, my God. Yeah, it was terrible. Notice how, like, there was very little evidence provided other than that one moment where they're like, there's this shady text message from a whistleblower with real name. Real name person from China. Yeah, and all their sources were just like random people that all seem to have connections with the far right. What a great A+, 10 out of 10. Great documentary. Thank you, Joshua Phillip. And thanks everyone for watching. Hit the 3-hour mark, which I did not want to go over 3 hours. So this is perfect. We nailed it. We landed it.
Hello, my rebels. Hello, my rebels. I'm a good boy. I'm a weirdo.